In this video, we'll talk about graphic design. We'll try and define graphic design, talk about what it is to be a graphic designer, and then kind of go into depth about some of the specific areas in graphic design. Graphic design is really just the visual representation of an idea. Often, designers organize visual elements. These elements usually include text, images, illustrations, and the purpose is to convey a specific message, usually for a specific client. Graphic design can serve commerce, clothing companies, food companies, electricians, all sorts of businesses use design in their marketing and advertising and in their communication of their products. It can also serve society. There's educational purposes for design. There's nonprofit organizations that use graphic designers, and there's environmental causes. But the main thing that you should know, if you learn anything in this course, if you don't already know this, is that designers solve problems and they generate ideas that take visual form. So there is a difference between art and graphic design. Often art is design and design is art, but art really has no specific preconditions. It is its own end. You can do anything in art, in fine art, and it's really about communicating something that you're passionate about or that you're interested in, or just doing. Art can be pure process. Design, on the other hand, is about serving a specific client problem, finding a solution for a specific client problem. As a designer, you'll probably be given components, photos, formats, colors, and it's your job to put these things together to convey a message. And usually you've discussed this message in detail with the client, and you both understand what the message is, and you both understand what needs to be communicated. Here's a quote, "Design graces our lives with the aesthetic presentation of useful and beneficial things. Art graces our lives with representations of things to ponder and perceive." So there's different kinds of graphic design, and we're going to talk about all these different kinds. So we're going to start out with icons and logos. So we have symbol design, visual identity and branding. Think Nike, a huge company that uses lots of visual identity. Branding onto print, clothing, objects, often for the inside of stores or trade shows. There's printed materials such as letterhead, packaging, posters, brochures, diagrams, such as maps, marketing materials, book layouts, magazine layouts, and billboards. There's environmental graphics, trade shows, signage, installations. Think about museums and how much thought goes into creating the inside of the environment at a museum. There's many different components that kind of tie it together, but it becomes visually connected somehow. There's navigation systems, airport signage, for example, and there's outdoor signage, buildings, sculptures with text. There's advertising and web design. So these are all kind of specific design areas that we're going to talk about. So first, icons and logos. So this is a very famous logo. I'm sure almost all of you, if not all of you, have seen it before. It's been around for many years. And what's interesting about it is that it was designed by William Golden, who is the creative director, was the creative director for CBS in 1951. And he got the inspiration for this logo while he was driving through Pennsylvania Dutch country. He became intrigued by the hex symbols that he saw on the sides of barns. And these hex symbols were, the purpose was to ward off evil spirits. And he became intrigued by this and used this as inspiration for his CBS design. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it's really important for you as a designer to understand that these inspirations come from many different places. And you need to be observing many different things to get these inspirations, thinking about, observing, collecting samples. So in this class, for example, you're going to have a class samples folder, and you're going to need to collect different images and graphics to put in this folder. And one of the reasons this is assigned is that it's just to get you used to looking, researching, thinking. ABC, American Broadcasting Company. This design was done by Paul Rand, who is a very influential designer. He's on our for our designer research project. He's one of the designers there, and I really encourage you to look at his work. He's done many different influential logos, and he's a very good designer. He solves problems in very interesting ways. Nike, this logo is very familiar to us. It was designed by Carolyn Davidson, who was a student at Portland State University, and she was doing some freelance work for a teacher at the school. He needed a logo for what was then Blue Ribbon Sports. When she first gave him the logo, he didn't like it very much. He was kind of on the fence. He didn't know if this was the right design for the company. But he paid her $35, and in September 1983, 3 years after the company went public, Carolyn received a diamond ring engaged with the swoosh and an envelope filled with Nike stock. At the time, the teacher stated, "I don't love it, but it will grow on me." And that's what he had said when she gave him the logo. So IBM, International Business Machines, also designed by Paul Rand. And you can see these stripes here. The intent of these stripes was to suggest speed. It was supposed to be very dynamic. He also designed the Westinghouse logo. Very simple, but scales beautifully. And the UPS logo, United Parcel Service. He actually redesigned this logo, but this is probably one that you've grown up looking at. AT&T, this logo was designed by Saul Bass in 1984. He also designed the Quaker logo, which is just a beautiful example of negative space. Later on in the course, I'm going to show you some different variations of this logo and how it changed over the years. But it's very simple, positive, negative, but there's an interplay, and it becomes ambiguous. What's positive, what's negative? We have United Airlines. This logo also scales beautifully. You can see how large it is here on the wing of the airplane. So logos are often used as a system. And this system is called branding. And branding is the process of a look for all pieces. It begins with the logo. That's the most important part of branding, is starting out with the symbol that's going to visually tie things together. You then can change the colors, add elements, and apply your logo and a variety of elements to print, web, packaging, signage, and environmental design. But that basic symbol has to kind of transcend and go in different places. It has to scale well. It has to be look good very large, look good very small. It has to be easy to kind of put things up next to it, and yet it has to stand alone. So here's an example of a system for Levi's. You can see the simple design of the logo, quite a compelling shape, and how it's used in many different ways. So there's the product itself, the jeans, the clothing. Here are the business cards. You can see how there's kind of a tie between the other visual graphics used and the text used. The font type is consistent, but yet they're mixing it up. They're changing each thing they design so that it has its own unique design, but it's visually tied to everything else. And really, that's what identity design is, tying everything together, making it visually consistent, making it feel united and appropriate. So it all begins with this logo, and you can kind of see here the application of, this is the Electrolyte logo and its application to many different things. Letterhead, business cards, envelopes, packaging, slips. You can put it as gray on black or gray on white. Here is the KO logo. and you can see how it was branded on the letterhead and the business card. Some other examples. This right here is called a full bleed. So when we start to talk about printing, you'll begin to understand that when you lay out a document for print, you have to make certain decisions. You decide how far the bleed is going to go. Is it going to be a full bleed, a 3/4 bleed, a one-side bleed, what color to use, how many colors to use in the process. Commercial printers have these things called spot colors, and you can either choose to do a CMY color printing job, which is basically a full color printing job, or a spot color printing job. And a spot color is just one pre-mixed color that can be used. Often it's cheaper to use just one spot color. Another example of a full bleed. This is really nice with the logo on the back and the text on the front. You can see kind of the visual unity using the same color, and then the letterhead. And the logo scales really well. It's you know, a nice symbol when it's very small. You still can see it. It doesn't. If you notice when you're designing your logos for this class, that when you get them really small, if they look kind of confusing, or they start to blur a little bit, or it just doesn't, you can't recognize it anymore, or it's too complicated, then you need to rethink it and maybe simplify it. Environmental design is important, especially for these big companies like Nike, where lots of people are employed to create these amazing environments that are visually connected. So they would employ architects, lighting designers, landscape designers, print designers. You know, there's a whole slew of different people needed to create these intricate environments. And here's Levi. You can see that even the product placement is carefully considered in relation to everything else. And this is beautiful with the shoes all going around the chandelier here. And you can see how beautifully the clothes go into the space, really adding that bright color. Nike Town. So this is the sign for the outside of Nike Town. And this starts out just as a simple Illustrator file. This would be designed in Illustrator and then sent to a signage shop where they would create the sign, and then it would have to be you know, placed onto the building. So it's a process, many different people involved. Ben & Jerry's is famous for its environmental design and its product design. This company was started by two American hippies, young American hippies in the 1970s, and they had taken this $5 correspondence course in ice cream making, and they built this huge ice cream empire. And you know, if you go to the Nike factory and do a factory tour, as a designer, you're really blown away by how much detail is incorporated into the environment and into the products themselves. And so once again, this all starts out maybe as an Illustrator file, and then these are print designers that start out kind of designing the visual look, and then they're sent to specific companies that might create signage, for example, or they might be sent to a big printer who would create these prints to go on these signs here. There's obviously architects employed to create this frame here for the store. These kind of printable letters were sent to a print shop, started out as an Illustrator file, sent to a print shop, and then put on the outside of this window. Even the actual factory is beautiful. It's visually consistent with the rest of the design going on in the environment. And you have milk, cream, I love that.